There's a conspiracy that's been going around the internet that chances are you've heard. It goes a little something like this. A long time ago, our country had pretty legit slavery, and then we abolished it with the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment had a loophole, though, that said that people could still be forced to work as punishment for a crime. It is now believed by many people that corporations are lobbying the government to put as many people in prison as possible so that they can be forced to work as punishment for their crime. This conspiracy is absolutely 100% false, and I'm going to prove it in this video. In real life, there are barely any prisoners working for private corporations, and they cannot be paid less than the minimum wage. But before I give you what the exact facts are, let's first debunk some common talking points that have made their ways around the internet. In March of 2008, a woman by the name of Vicky Pelez wrote an article titled, "The Prison Industry in the United States, Big Business or a New Form of Slavery." In the article, she would go on to make the following statement. According to the Left Business Observer, the federal prison industry produces 100% of all military helmets, ammunition belts, bulletproof vests, ID tags, shirts, pants, tents, bags, and canteens. Along with war supplies, prison workers supply 98% of the entire market for equipment assembly services, 93% of paints and paintbrushes, 92% of stove assembly, 46% of body armor, 36% of home appliances, 30% of headphones, microphones, and speakers, and 21% of office furniture. Now, as scary specific as all of these numbers are, they are all 100% made up on the spot. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, what kind of person would just make this all completely up? I'll tell you who. A Russian spy. Vicky Pelez, the person who wrote this article, I kid you not, was arrested for being a spy for the Russian government. You can read about it on the Wikipedia page for the Illegals program. One of the 10 busted Russian spies was our very own Vicky Pelez. Her and her fake husband Juan Lazaro were arrested on June 27, 2010, where they confessed to being spies for the Russian government. Once it was revealed that Vicky Pelez was a spy for the Russian government, people started going through her claims with a fine-tooth comb. When they did, a lot of her claims would not withstand any scrutiny. Doug Henwood, who writes the Left Business Observer, the alleged source of this claim, completely disavowed the comments. Misquoted by an alleged spy, in this article, Vicky Pelez attributed a rather incredible accounting of the productivity of federal prison labor to me, though I never wrote these things and am skeptical that they are actually true. The Left Business Observer did not come up with this claim, and to this very day, convicted Russian lying spy Vicky Pelez remains its only source. Another popular claim that's been going around the internet was made by Joshua B. Freeman and Steve Frazier of Slate magazine. In an article titled "Locking Down an American Workforce," these two gentlemen made the following statement. All told, nearly 1 million prisoners are now making office furniture, working in call centers, fabricating body armor, taking hotel reservations, working in slaughterhouses, or manufacturing textiles, shoes, and clothing, while getting paid somewhere between 93 cents and $4.73 per day. While Freeman and Frazier did not necessarily give a source for this claim, we know what the source is because similar claims around the internet did give their source. Their source is a UCLA law professor by the name of Noah Zatz, who wrote a working paper titled "Working at the Boundaries of Markets, Prison Labor and the Economic Dimensions of Employment Relationships." Now, it turns out this claim is wrong as well, but the reason why is because they didn't accurately portray what Noah Zatz said in his working paper. So let's read that. Although laments over the idleness of prisoners are not uncommon, well over 600,000 and probably close to 1 million inmates are working full-time in jails and prisons throughout the United States. His source is as follows. One survey of state and federal prisons counts roughly 650,000 inmates at work, approximately half of the total prison population. The total would be approximately 1 million if similar proportions hold true in jails. Now, at the outset, it appears as though what Noah Zatz is saying is in favor of what Freeman is saying. But you have to read deeper into the document to understand exactly what's really going on. The most common, but least visible form of prison labor is what I term prison housework. Prison housework is a subset of state use in which a prison manages production and also consumes its output, as inmates contribute directly to prison operations by cooking meals, doing laundry, or cleaning the facility. And then as a source it says the Criminal Justice Institute, Supra Note 30 at 118, approximately 550,000 inmates perform this type of work. Now remember, that's 550,000 out of 650,000, not a million. The million number was merely a guess. In other words, of the 2.2 million people incarcerated in the United States, fewer than 100,000 are doing some type of labor other than just scrubbing toilets and cooking pizza. And even then, that still doesn't make it 100,000 inmates working for private corporations. The common images of prisoners manufacturing license plates is still the case in 90% of the remaining examples. So let's talk more about that. If an inmate is to do work other than just doing dishes and laundry within the prison, they are going to work for a state-run agency that is a division of the Department of Corrections. These state industries usually have a name something along the lines of insert state name correctional industries. So there's Arizona Correctional Industries and Arkansas Correctional Industries and Alabama Correctional Industries. These state-run programs usually hire about 2 or 3% of the inmates in that state. They will usually list how many inmates they hire on their annual report or their website. So for example, Ohio Penal Industries hires 1,347 inmates. California Prison Industry Authority has 4,835 inmates. Texas Correctional Industries hires 6,016 inmates. And the Federal Prison Industry hires 13,000 inmates. Estimates for the total number of inmates working for various state-run programs and the federal government are about 67,000 inmates. For the majority of these inmates, and there are a few exceptions I'll talk about later, they are working for the state and they are manufacturing goods to be sold to the state. In fact, for most of these states, it is prohibited by law for inmate-made goods to be sold on the private sector. And you can actually read in many of these states' websites where it explicitly says that they will not sell to private individuals or corporations. Here's a few examples. Iowa Prison Industries is a work arm of the Iowa Department of Corrections. IPI's products and services are only available to purchase by government agencies or Missouri Vocational Enterprises. Due to state statutes, MVE cannot sell products or service to private individuals or industries. Corecraft is the marketplace name for the New York State Department of Correctional Services. By law, Corecraft can only sell to government agencies. Welcome to the New Jersey State Use Industries Debt Corps' website. Quality goods and services offered by Debt Corps can only be sold to government or tax-supported industries. Pennsylvania Correctional Industries operates under the state use system, a system which inmates can produce goods and services only for consumption by governments and other tax-supported entities. Maryland Correctional Enterprises. Sales are limited to government agencies, state contractors, and nonprofit organizations. Georgia Correctional Industries is a self-sufficient authority owned by the state. We only sell to government entities or contractors working for government entities. But perhaps most surprising of all is Alabama, which actually outlaws the selling of prison-made goods. Now let's stop and think about the magnitude of this for just a second. Earlier, we were told by a Russian spy that 36% of all home appliances were made by prisoners. And now we're finding out that not even Alabama allows prison-made goods to be sold? I mean, it's just more proof that she made that all up. So if these states don't allow prison-made goods to be sold on the open market, then why do we occasionally read anecdotes about prisoners supposedly working for Fortune 500 companies? Well, it does happen. It's just that it rarely ever happens. If a prisoner is to make something that can be sold on the open market, they must be registered with the PIECP program, which stands for the Prison Industry Enhancement Certification Program. It was created by Congress in 1979 and is the only mechanism in which prisoners can actually make goods to be sold on the open market. Contrary to popular belief, if a prisoner is to work for a private corporation, they must be paid at least the minimum wage. Whenever someone tells you that a private corporation can hire a prisoner for 50 cents an hour, that person is lying to you. If you don't believe me, which I strongly suspect many of you don't, I can prove it to you. If we look at the Kansas Department of Corrections annual report, they say that they had 915 inmates working for a private corporation at some point during the year. Those 915 inmates got paid a combined $15 million, which is above the minimum wage, and definitely nowhere near the $4.73 per day that Joshua B. Freeman wrongly claimed they could get paid. Only the government can pay prisoners that little. Despite claims that, lots and lots of prisoners are working for private corporations, the PIEC program is very well documented in how many prisoners it hires. In fact, you can look up quarterly reports on the PIECP's website, and when we do, we find that in the second quarter of 2015, the total number of inmates that were hired in the PIECP program was 4,986, roughly 0.2% of all those incarcerated in the U.S. But wait, it gets even worse. You see, the PIECP program isn't just for corporations that want to hire prisoners. It's for anyone who wants to hire prisoners to sell goods on the private market, including the government. So this 4,986 inmates includes some that are working for the government. So for example, if I look at all the inmates that are working in the state of California, I find 3 corporations. I find the 5 Dot Land and Cattle Company, Joint Venture Electronics, and the Merit Corporation are combined hiring 45 inmates to work in California. When I scroll down to Colorado, I find the following: CCI Fiberglass Products, CCI Industrial Sewing, CCI Steel Productions, CCI Territorial Products, and CCI Wood Products. Who is this CCI that's hiring all these prisoners in Colorado? It's Colorado Correctional Industries. So this is the government hiring workers to sell stuff on the private sector. We see this with Florida and their Pride program, and we also see this a bit with Tennessee and their Tri-Corps program. Overall, of the 4,986 inmates that are working for the PIEC program, only 3,250 are actually working for private sector corporations. Okay, so a lot of you are probably wondering, well, what difference does it make if it's 3,000 inmates or 1,000,000 inmates working for private corporations? Private corporations should not be hiring prisoners. This is wrong. It should be 0. Well, first of all, I want to say that it is 0 in 29 states. There are 29 states in this country where it's either illegal or not used at all. You may read occasionally on the internet that there are 37 states that allow private corporations to hire prisoners, but at any given moment of time, there are 16 that aren't using them. So there are 16 states in the PIECP program that currently did not have an active inmate working for a private corporation in the second quarter of 2015. Those are Alaska, Connecticut, Hawaii, Louisiana, Maine had 3, Maryland, Michigan, Montana, New Mexico, North Dakota, Ohio, Vermont, Virginia, Washington, West Virginia, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. Those are 16 states in which it was possible for a prisoner to be hired, but they weren't. Now let me explain to you what this conspiracy is really about. The liberal philosophy towards politics is that the government is inherently good left to its own devices, and the private sector is inherently bad left to its own devices. The private sector can do bad, but only with the influence of the government in the form of regulations, and the public sector can do bad, but only with the influence of private sector corporations somehow lobbying it. So what they want to do is they want to make it seem like every time the government passes a dumb law, it was tricked into passing that dumb law by corporations. So they don't agree with marijuana being illegal, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, well, the reason why marijuana is illegal is because corporations want prisoners to be their slaves, and they want them to be in prison where they can be forced to work. Well, they're all wrong about everything. They cannot be forced to work for private corporations. They can't be paid less than the minimum wage. And it's not happening in 29 states. I don't get it. I mean, shouldn't marijuana be legal in 29 states if that were the case? It makes no sense. What this conspiracy is really about is defending their dogma in their faith in the government. If we look at the statistics, we have 67,000 inmates in this country manufacturing goods and doing services other than just scrubbing toilets and cooking pizza. And of those 67,000, 64,000 are working for the government. And in many cases, they legally can't even sell to the private sector. So there's absolutely no corporate conspiracy to get rich off their labor when they can't hire them, even in states like Alabama. If liberals truly gave a shit about prison labor, they would be putting almost all of their blame on the government and maybe occasionally bringing up the private sector. They don't do that because they're trying to absolve the government of blame.